So Wirrng Wirrng is located on the traditional lands of the Wadawurrung people. The project is situated in Queenscliff, a few hundred metres from the ocean. And this area is at the entry to Port Phillip, which has been a significant strategic marine location for millennia. Wirrng Wirrng is the new community hub for Queenscliff, so named by Corrina Eccles on behalf of the Wadawurrung Traditional Owners, after the phrase meaning listen with both ears. This invitation is reflected in the shared functions of library, museum, visitor information centre and community meeting place. It is a building for learning, listening and communicating, and a reminder from Eccles to listen to country. Queenscliff today is the only borough in Victoria and the smallest local government area. Particularly in the early stages of the project, we undertook a lot of community engagement and stakeholder engagement with a very active and vocal community and a complicated stakeholder group. There is a high level of accountability between the borough and its citizens, and there is an amount of local personal passion that has driven this project from funding stage. And Wadawurrung community members were also consulted at different stages throughout the project. Our site on Hesse Street has the Queenscliff Library and Visitor Information Centre in the heritage building you can see on the right, with the Queenscliff Historical Museum set back behind Field Park. The park forms an interval between these two significant heritage buildings on a predominantly historic Hesse Street. The rear of the site is occupied by a significant Moreton Bay fig tree, but there was otherwise little invitation to occupy these areas of the site. There is a 1974 building on the right, which we strove to retain. It's the one with the windows. This diagram shows the spectrum of intervention into the existing fabric. The front library has been retained, and we have reinforced the 1888 building's original form by inserting our new connection behind its roof, shown in the palest pink. The next level of intervention is the 1974 fabric, which we did more to and cellularised, and then the new construction is to the north of the site. And then these are both separated by a breezeway wing, which was a really early move to create an interval between the two buildings. It welcomes visitors to the canopy of the fig tree, and a series of outdoor spaces are defined by our building elements. We have a more formal street park to the front, a sunny outdoor courtyard, which the breezeway spills out into and can be an event space. And then the more informal revegetation to underneath the canopy of the fig tree to the rear. The rear of the site, it doesn't lead to a proper laneway, it's sort of like a truncated exit. The change in height across the site has been leveraged to occupy the canopy of the fig tree and to create an opportunistic undercroft space, spill out space at the lower level, which you can see there. The breezeway spine opens up to spill out into the courtyard in good weather. Its transparency creates a clear visual gap between the existing and the new. And our new building is set back to retain the existing park interval so that the primacy of the predominantly heritage street is maintained. And our new building is also a little bit lower than the adjacent heritage buildings as well. Elaine Human-Gurian talks about the potential of museums to be catalytic community placemakers. They are for gathering, research, celebration of culture and making new connections. The cultural functions of libraries and information centres further align with this purpose, and as Corrina Eccles reminds with the building name, they are also spaces about listening and learning. So we tried to find ways to support this richness of community activity, which can be hard to do through a necessarily closed museum façade, especially a small volunteer-run museum with limited opening hours. So one move we made was to introduce a simple 24-hour museum by introducing peepholes as a playful façade engagement strategy, allowing a little peek into history any time of the day. So these are dotted across the facade and they contain small artefacts and digital displays. The entire street park, in fact, can be conceptualised as a museum of cultural artefacts. Heritage buildings, heritage street furniture have all been preserved. There's living heritage in the trees, and we also reintroduced more local plant species back onto the site. A new interpretive plinth is to be designed by a Wadawurrung artist, which is still in progress, and will mark the main entry to the site. The serrated glazing is a pretty oblique reference to the region's maritime history and a celebration of the Fresnel lens. Its panes refract the adjacent heritage buildings. Bus stops, bins, seats, signage and water station are organised into a series of bespoke urban furniture elements that define the footpath and building edges framing the park. The main entry to the building is from the courtyard space to the north of the courtyard, and then each part of the building is connected into a spine which runs all the way north to south. The building program has been distributed to suit the needs of each organisation. So early on it was established that it was appropriate to retain the library in its historical location, and we were able to move it back into some of the front rooms that it had been pushed out of. The Visitor Information Centre occupies the central zone in the most public and welcoming location, and it has the opportunity to spill out and use the circulation areas. The museum is to the north, where it has better security and climate control. And then there are a series of shared spaces, so public kind of event gathering space that can be booked by the community, which overlooks the fig tree, number 13. And then to the south is public toilets and staff areas. And so these provide more than if each organisation had been trying to do it on its own. In the lower floor, it's quite a reduced footprint, so just some museum storage spaces and that opportunistic undercroft space that we tried to maintain. So just take you on a quick building tour. So you can see, apologies, the front park, and you can see the sort of shadow play across the facade throughout the day. There's at the entry a more controlled airlock entry to the left, or the more looser openable breezeway entry. Just looking back across the facade, you can see a little glimpse of there's a little cabinet of curiosities in the entry airlock. This shot shows the Visitor Information Centre to the left and through to the auditorium beyond. We used a lot of blackbutt as a local timber species throughout, and there's a lot of timber hidden in the structure as a way to try to reduce embodied energy in the building. And we also use glulam beams as a way to reinforce the spine, the circulation spine. It's the library on the left and the museum on the right. The museum did their own fit-out design. We just provided a warm shell. The planting at the back needs to grow in and soften a lot more, but that should become quite a rich garden space. And
if you can just run through the slides.
That's it. This is the last one. Yep. Just some architects enjoying the breezeway.